Welcome back, learner. You know, usually when we look at the history of global technology adoption, we expect entire regions to sort of crawl before they walk.
Right, yeah. The classic slow burn.
Exactly. We're used to seeing this very specific, very slow progression. First, you get the, tentative adoption, then maybe some small-scale pilot programs.
And then endless years of policy debates.
Endless debates. And then maybe a decade later, you finally see the actual physical infrastructure being built.
Which is the standard, very cautious, completely linear progression we've seen with, well, almost every major technological shift over the last 50 years.
Yeah, but today we are taking a deep dive into an entire continent that is looking at that cautious progression and just, well, deciding to skip the talking phase altogether.
They're completely bypassing it.
They really are. We've got our hands on a staggering new document today. It's the Q1 2026 Africa Artificial Intelligence Digest. And for you listening, we're not just going to read you a dry policy review here or, rattle off a list of government initiatives.
No, definitely not.
We are exploring the very near future of global technology. We're looking at how an entire continent, all 54 nations, is leaping straight into concrete action. From mobilizing literally billions in investment capital to physically building their own sovereign technology ecosystems right from the ground up.
Because what we are tracking in this first quarter of 2026, it isn't just a trend. It's a deliberate structural shift.
Yeah.
We are watching the foundations of a completely new digital economy being poured in real time. It's this massive mobilization of resources that is, frankly, completely altering the global tech landscape.
Okay, let's unpack this because you really can't understand the underlying technology without first following the capital. And the sheer scale of the financial ambition outlined in this digest it's just wild.
It really is.
The African Development Bank, working right alongside the UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, they just launched this AI 10 billion initiative at the Nairobi AI Forum.
Right.
They are committing to mobilize up to $10 billion specifically to create, get this, 40 to 45 million jobs across the continent by 2035.
And the mechanism behind that 10 billion is really what makes it so potent.
How so?
Well, it's not just governments writing blank checks, right? They are using these initial grants to de-risk massive private capital investment.
Oh, I see. So it brings in the private sector.
Exactly. And it aligns perfectly with the market projections we see in the digest. The African AI market is currently forecast to jump from $4.5 billion in 2025 to $16.5 billion by 2030.
Wow.
Yeah, that represents a 27% compound annual growth rate.
That is a literal gold rush.
Completely.
And from the data, it looks heavily concentrated, too. Like, the report breaks down the big four, which is Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and Egypt.
The major hubs, yeah.
Right, and those four nations alone are currently gobbling up like 83% of all the continent's tech startup funding.
But wait, I need to pause you there, because as I'm reading through these massive financial projections, a glaring physical reality just sort of jumps out at me.
The infrastructure gap. Yes, the math doesn't seem to work. The digest points out that Africa currently holds less than 1% of global data center capacity.
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%. If the market is jumping to $16.5 billion, the physical servers have to go somewhere, right? It sounds like buying this massive fleet of, electric supercars, but having absolute no charging stations.
That's a great way to put it. And the physical compute gap is definitely the continent's most severe bottleneck right now. Because you cannot run localized high-parameter AI models without the server racks.
Right.
You need the specialized GPUs, you need the massive liquid cooling systems required to process all that data.
Yeah.
But here is the thing. Instead of waiting for Western tech companies to solve this, these nations are aggressively negotiating the infrastructure themselves.
So how are they building those charging stations, to stick with the analogy? Is this infrastructure money actually materializing, or is this just more, speculative projection?
No, it is already hitting the ground.
Really?
Yeah. Look at the telecom giant MTN Group. Under their Ambition 2030 strategy, they are actively targeting Nigeria and South Africa to build brand new AI-enabled data centers.
Okay.
And these aren't your standard storage servers. They're being built with the specific liquid cooling and high-density power requirements that you absolutely need for AI workloads.
Wow.
And alongside the telecom companies, you have Microsoft pledging 5.4 billion rand, which is roughly $300 million.
Right.
And that's specifically for AI and cloud infrastructure in South Africa through 2027.
Okay, so the concrete is actually being poured. The servers are coming online.
The servers are coming online, yeah. But Kenya is taking it a massive step further into the actual hardware supply chain itself.
Oh,
There's this groundbreaking partnership between the United States Trade and Development Agency and Kenyan Semiconductor Technologies Limited.
okay.
They're establishing Africa's very first semiconductor manufacturing facility right in Nairobi.
Wait, that is a massive leap. They aren't just building the air-conditioned rooms to host the chips. They want to manufacture the silicon itself.
Exactly. It changes the entire supply chain
Yeah.
dynamic. To truly capitalize on this new digital economy, African nations are recognizing that true independence means owning the hardware production.
That makes total sense.
But, a data center is just a very expensive empty brain until you give it a language to think in,
Right.
which means they also need to own the code.
Which transitions us perfectly to the software side of this ecosystem. Because for you listening, imagine if the smartest analytical tool in the world, like a tool you rely on for your business logistics or your child's education or even your local healthcare. Imagine if it didn't actually understand your native language.
It would be incredibly frustrating.
Totally. Imagine trying to prompt an AI that fundamentally lacks the cultural context, the idioms and the historical nuances of how you speak.
Well, it creates an immediate friction point. If an AI only understands Silicon Valley English, it severely limits the utility of the tool for literally billions of people.
Yeah.
And, frankly, it keeps the technological power dynamic firmly in the hands of developers sitting in California.
But this Q1 digest shows that dynamic is fracturing fast. I mean, we are seeing a massive push for local language integration.
Absolutely.
Let's look at Egypt. In February, at the AI Everything MEA Summit down in Cairo, the Egyptian government unveiled Karnak. This is Africa's first sovereign large language model.
And it's impressive.
It's not just some small-scale prototype either. It just dominated the Arabic performance benchmarks in the 30 to 80 billion parameter range.
What's fascinating here is how Karnak was actually built.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, when you translate a cultural idiom from English to Arabic using a Western model, the cultural subtext is often completely stripped away.
It gets lost in translation.
Exactly. But Karnak was trained on the region's specific literature, their local news, and daily digital conversations. It actually understands the subtext.
Wow.
It officially positions Egypt as the continent's leading government AI-ready nation. And Morocco is pushing a similar initiative, but heavily focused on industrial application.
Right, the digest mentions Morocco just launched the Jazari Industry X.0 Institute in Fez.
Yes, and Industry X.0 in this context means using AI to completely overhaul manufacturing automation and supply chain optimization.
Okay.
Their goal is to translate AI research directly into industrial use. They're targeting a $10 billion GDP impact,
That's huge.
50,000 new jobs, and 200,000 AI-trained graduates by 2030.
And it is definitely not just North Africa taking control of their software either. There's this company called Veda Origin that just rolled out an African-focused LLM across 6 countries.
Right, I saw that.
Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, and Zambia. This model specifically supports Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, and Swahili.
It's a massive regional coverage.
It really is. Even the legacy tech giants are realizing they're falling behind and they're kind of scrambling to catch up. Like, Google is actively expanding its native language search in Nigeria to include Yoruba and Hausa.
Yeah.
And the Ethiopian Artificial Intelligence Institute is pushing hard for massive natural language processing tools for their own indigenous languages.
Because the underlying strategy here is a concept known as digital sovereignty.
Digital sovereignty, okay.
Yeah, building foundational models like Karnak or those localized NLP tools in Ethiopia, it's a deliberate geopolitical strategy.
Right.
If you rely entirely on models trained in another hemisphere, your digital infrastructure will always reflect that hemisphere's values, their historical biases, their language structures.
That makes a lot of sense.
By building sovereign AI, these nations are ensuring their digital future is built entirely on their own cultural and linguistic terms.
So they are taking direct control of the underlying logic of their tech. But that makes me wonder, when these sovereign models and localized algorithms actually hit the streets, what does that look like in daily life?
It's already happening.
Right, because reading the digest, the real-world impact isn't just theory anymore. It is actively changing how society functions.
We are seeing immediate applications across the most critical sectors. Take healthcare, for example. The Aga Khan University just launched the Kikahozi Classifier AI project.
Oh, Kikahozi means cough in Swahili, right? The report notes this is for the early detection of respiratory diseases in East Africa.
That's right. And the mechanism is just brilliant.
How does it work?
The AI isn't just, listening to a patient cough. It's actively analyzing the microacoustic patterns.
Like the specific pitch and stuff.
Exactly. The specific frequency and duration of the sound. And it compares it against thousands of confirmed tuberculosis or pneumonia acoustic signatures.
Oh.
Yeah, so it flags high-risk patients at rural or under-resourced clinics long before they ever need to wait for a human specialist.
That is a total game changer for medical triage.
It really is.
And looking at the financial sector, the impact seems just as rapid. I mean, the Bank of Namibia just won the Central Banking AI Initiative Award for 2026.
Right.
They built this predictive analytics machine learning model to track non-performing loans alongside an AI-powered regulatory guidance platform they call RegNav.
They're basically using the technology to anticipate economic friction before it even happens.
It's incredible. But honestly, my absolute favorite practical example from the entire digest has to be out of Nigeria.
Oh, the telecom refund.
Yes. Their Communications Commission and Central Bank introduced this joint AI-driven framework that requires an automatic refund for failed airtime or data transactions within 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
30 seconds. I mean, traditionally, if a transaction fails, it sits in some reconciliation queue for a human bank teller to review, which takes, 3 to 5 business days?
Exactly. But now, the AI system instantly cross-references the telecom database with the bank's digital ledger.
Okay.
It verifies that the data packet dropped, and it reverses the API call in milliseconds. It just eliminates the human bottleneck entirely.
I mean, imagine a failed transaction and the AI just instantly recognizes the error and puts your money right back.
It's seamless.
That is a massive quality of life upgrade for the average consumer. And it ties directly into another huge financial metric in the report. AI-driven credit scoring is currently bridging the finance gap for 400 million unbanked individuals across Nigeria and Kenya.
And that's critical because those 400 million people do not have traditional bank accounts.
Right.
Meaning they have no formal credit history.
Right.
So the AI solves this by analyzing alternative data points.
Like what kind of data?
Well, it looks at how regularly they top up their prepaid mobile phone minutes, for instance.
Oh, interesting.
Their utility bill payment consistency, even their mobile money transfer velocity. And it uses all that to build a reliable risk profile completely from scratch.
See, here's where it gets really interesting, though, and I want to pump the brakes for a second.
Okay.
Because right next to that incredible statistic about 400 million unbanked individuals getting access to loans, the report highlights a deeply concerning problem.
The bias issue.
Yeah. It notes that women-led small and medium enterprises, the SMEs, are facing consistent algorithmic bias in these exact same AI lending systems.
Right.
So, as amazing as diagnosing respiratory diseases or getting instant 30-second refunds is, aren't we just taking the old human prejudices and kind of baking them into a brand new, highly efficient system?
Well, that is the mechanical reality of machine learning, unfortunately. AI systems are essentially massive pattern matching engines.
Right.
They inherit the flaws of their training data.
Right.
So if historical lending practices in the specific region systematically disadvantaged women,
Which they often did.
exactly, then the historical data reflects that reality. So when the AI analyzes that data, it mathematically learns the pattern that women are higher credit risk.
Oh, wow.
And it simply automates the denial of those loans.
So the machine isn't biased in, a human sense.
Yeah.
It is just perfectly executing a flawed historical pattern.
Correct. The technology drives massive financial inclusion for the unbanked. But without incredibly careful auditing of the specific data weights, it quietly and efficiently enforces exclusion for certain demographics.
That's terrifying.
The historical bias just becomes hidden behind this veneer of mathematical objectivity.
Which brings up a really crucial point. Once we see how AI automates decisions, we have to look at how it tracks the people making those decisions. Following that thread of unintended consequences, the conversation really has to shift to the darker side of these rapid infrastructure rollouts. We've talked about healthcare and banking, but this technology is also being deployed in ways that drastically alter the concept of personal privacy.
They definitely do. The digest includes a very sobering report from the Institute of Development Studies, the IDS,
Right.
which is a global research group that tracks space technology deployments. And they released a report this March detailing how AI is being rapidly utilized by state infrastructure.
Yeah, and to be clear to you listening, we are just looking at the numbers as they are impartially reported by the IDS here, strictly from an infrastructure and regulatory standpoint.
Just the data.
Just the data. But the scale of the hardware deployment is staggering. The report exposes that 11 African countries have collectively spent over $2.1 billion on Chinese AI-powered smart city surveillance systems.
It's the sheer density of that spending that really stands out. Nigeria alone accounts for $470 million of that total.
Unbelievable.
They're deploying over 10,000 smart cameras, equipped with facial recognition and automated number plate tracking.
Wow.
Mauritius spent $456 million on over 4,100 cameras.
Right.
In nations like Uganda, Zambia, Senegal, Mozambique, Rwanda, and Algeria, they're all pouring hundreds of millions into similar visual tracking architectures.
Think about the density of that for a second. 10,000 smart cameras in Nigeria alone. To put that in perspective for you listening, that is enough surveillance infrastructure to track a citizen across almost every major intersection in Lagos simultaneously. Your biometric data is constantly being scooped up, tracked, and logged every single time you walk down the street or drive your car. And the IDS report explicitly points out that this rapid technological growth is happening while operating in a complete legal gray area.
Because the physical deployment is vastly outpacing the legal guardrails.
Right.
And it's not just state-run infrastructure where this vulnerability is causing chaos.
Yeah.
The lack of regulation is being heavily exploited by bad actors in the private sector, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The Smile ID 2026 Digital Identity Fraud Report provides a very clear, data-driven picture of this.
Yes. This part of the digest absolutely blew my mind. Smile ID reported that in Southern Africa, 87% of rejected biometric verifications are now AI-assisted fraud attempts.
I mean, let the scale of that number sink
Yeah.
in. 87% of all rejected attempts.
It's insane. And the mechanism behind it breaks down to 47% being AI impersonation and 40% being direct deepfake spoofing. So nearly half of the people trying to illegally access bank accounts, bypass security checks, or verify false identities are using AI-generated deepfakes to trick the system.
It's a huge problem.
Imagine someone using a synthetic AI-generated video of your face to successfully bypass a banking app's biometric security check and just drain your savings.
It illustrates a severe structural lag across the continent. We are witnessing rapid, massive deployments of highly advanced technology.
Yeah.
Whether it's thousands of state-run facial recognition cameras logging your movements,
Right.
or widely available deepfake software spoofing your identity.
Right.
And this deployment is moving at light speed while the legal frameworks meant to protect citizens are basically barely jogging to catch up.
Which logically brings us to the most pressing question of this entire deep dive. Who is actually setting the rules of the road for all of this? I mean, if we're looking at billions of dollars being spent on vast surveillance and 87% fraud rates on biometric security, someone needs to step in and establish the boundaries, right?
You would think so.
Yeah.
But according to the Africa AI Policy Lab's scorecard that was released in March, only 22 out of the 54 African countries actually possess an active AI strategy or policy framework.
22 out of 54. That is less than half the continent.
Less than half.
That feels like a massive vulnerability. But the digest does highlight some regions trying to close that gap, right? Like Kenya seems to be moving incredibly fast on the legislative side.
Very much so. On February 19th, Kenya introduced the Artificial Intelligence Bill 2026 to their Senate.
Okay.
And as of right now, it is the continent's most comprehensive AI-specific legislation.
What does it actually do?
It proposes a dedicated office of the AI Commissioner. It sets up risk-based classification systems for different algorithms. And specifically, it mandates the creation of regulatory sandboxes.
Right. And for those unfamiliar, a regulatory sandbox is essentially a safe, controlled testing environment.
Exactly.
It allows tech companies to test their new AI tools under regulatory supervision without the risk of accidentally breaking national laws or, harming consumers.
Yeah, it fosters innovation while still maintaining a safety net. And Nigeria is making significant moves as well with their National Digital Economy and E-Governance Bill.
I saw that.
That legislation empowers their National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA, with a strict, risk-based AI licensing framework.
Okay.
And it specifically targets high-risk AI systems deployed in finance, public administration, and notably, state surveillance.
Okay, so Kenya and Nigeria are actively writing modern, highly specific AI laws.
Yes.
But what happens to the other 32 countries, like the ones operating without active AI strategies?
Yeah.
How are they handling the 10,000 smart cameras or the deepfake banking fraud?
Well, this raises an important question. The Digest cites a comprehensive report from the Future of Privacy Forum, the FPF.
Okay.
They note that for the rest of the continent, basic data protection law is sort of emerging as the de facto instrument for AI governance.
Just standard data laws.
Yeah. Currently, 44 countries have adopted standard data protection laws, and 7 of them, including South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Angola, and Botswana, they're frantically revising those older frameworks to try and stretch them to cover AI-specific risks.
Like automated decision making and mass data scraping.
Exactly.
But using old privacy laws to regulate generative AI feels like, I don't know, it's like trying to regulate commercial air travel using maritime shipping laws.
That's a great comparison.
I mean, you can't use maritime laws for airplanes because the fundamental physics of gravity are entirely different.
Right?
Similarly, you can't use old data privacy laws for generative AI because old laws assume data is just statically stored in a digital filing cabinet.
Hmm.
Generative AI doesn't just store your data, it actively metabolizes it to create entirely new synthesized outputs.
Exactly.
A law written to protect a spreadsheet doesn't know how to handle an algorithm that scraped that spreadsheet to learn how to mimic your voice.
And that is the core friction point of the FPF report. You have Kenya and Nigeria drafting very precise, modern AI bills.
Yeah.
But the rest of the continent is relying on this patchwork of stretched, older privacy laws.
Yeah.
It creates a highly fragmented regulatory landscape,
A total mess, basically.
pretty much.
Yeah.
If you're a tech startup trying to build a Pan-African AI tool, navigating 54 completely different legal interpretations of how your algorithm is allowed to metabolize data is a massive barrier to entry.
It really is. So let's pull all of these massive threads together for you listening. We are looking at a continent undergoing a breathtaking, unprecedented transformation.
Truly.
In just the first 3 months of 2026, we have cracked a $10 billion investment mobilization. We've seen the physical pouring of concrete for specialized AI data centers, and this aggressive geopolitical push for digital sovereignty with culturally nuanced models like Egypt's Karnak.
Right.
We are seeing incredible real-world breakthroughs, from diagnosing coughs in rural clinics to instantly refunding failed bank transactions in milliseconds.
It's moving so fast.
It really is. But all of this rapid progress is balancing on an absolute knife edge of mass state surveillance, AI-assisted deepfake fraud, and a frantic, heavily fragmented race to write the legal frameworks before the technology completely outgrows the society it was built to serve.
It's a critical inflection point in global tech history. And, when you look at the sheer velocity of this development, it leaves us with something quite profound to consider.
What's that?
Well, if the African continent continues to leapfrog traditional legacy infrastructure, if these 54 nations successfully build their own culturally specific AI ecosystems and refine these unique, progressive regulatory sandboxes like we're seeing in Kenya,
Yeah.
could the continent eventually start exporting its AI governance models back to the West?
Oh, wow.
As the technology continues to evolve, will the next global standard for AI ethics, integration, and oversight come from Nairobi or Cairo, rather than Silicon Valley or Brussels?
That is a phenomenal question, and exactly the kind of perspective shift we love uncovering here. Keep questioning the algorithms, keep challenging the mechanisms behind the information around you, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.